you guys edit these?
No, sometimes.
Not really.
But we're recording now.
Perfect.
Okay, welcome to the Spin 70 podcast. 2 podcasts in 1 week. That's pretty solid. We did a Hanukkah podcast with Alex Amchislavsky.
That's great.
Spelled his name wrong twice on the upload.
Went live
At like 3:30 this p.m.
3:30 this p.m.
3:30 this p.m.
Well, I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah.
10 a.m. this tomorrow.
Not exactly.
Did you get it?
I still got it. Just go. Okay, go ahead.
Anyhow, we are graced with the presence of... Go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
Oh, hello.
Please do.
My name is Max Alpert.
Max Alpert. From... Where are you originally from?
Born and raised in Miami, Florida.
Miami, Florida. Where Scarface is from.
They don't ask questions. In
I mean, he's
Miami,
from Cuba.
Florida.
But Scarface, that's where Scarface happened. Did you ever meet Scarface?
No.
That's too bad.
Yeah, tough.
So we were briefly talking about your little journey. Wait, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, Yehuda Makowitz. I might talk at some point in this podcast.
He usually corrects me.
That's my job.
So we were briefly discussing your little life journey. You mentioned something about working in a cubicle farm.
Sure. Well, yeah, after college, I moved to Houston, Texas, where I got a job in the IT department of a company where I was in a cube 40 hours a week. And it wasn't what I wanted it to be. It wasn't
Right.
as fulfilling and enjoyable as I wanted my career to look.
Yeah.
And so eventually I decided to make a change.
How long were you doing that for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Okay.
And what did you change to?
Well, that's an interesting question because I was in a situation where I felt compelled to make a change without necessarily having the answer of what to change to. So rather than going back to school or getting a different job, I decided to take some time off of being a professional.
So before we get to that part, just out of curiosity, how difficult was it for you to make the decision of making that change?
Oh, really difficult. It's terrifying to give up security and something you're familiar with and really to disrupt your story. You know, I went to high school, went to college, got a job, was getting promoted and following that path, and then
Just cut it out.
yeah, and that was really
Like,
scary.
what would you say the process was like? Like, just to understand, like, where did that thought first click in, and when did you start to slowly take action on it? Because it's a slow action. Like, it's an implement. You implement it as you go. So, like, where was that more of a mental thing, emotional thing, or a physical thing for you?
Well, maybe a little bit of all three. It certainly wasn't an impulsive decision. I was very intentional about it. I mean, early on, I realized that lifestyle wasn't going to work for me, but I had some student loans that I made a priority to pay off, so I was doing that.
You paid those off, right?
Yeah, like I was
Thank God. Lucky man.
yeah. So I tried to figure out how to live a lifestyle that I could pay those off as quick as I can. So I got into like early retirement extreme and 4-hour work week, if you're familiar with those.
Tim Ferriss,
yeah, exactly.
of course.
And so I tried to spend as little as possible and threw money into my student loans, and then once those were paid off, I tried to maintain that lifestyle and just threw that money into savings.
Wow. Good for you.
So what was it about the 9 to 5, saving money, getting ready for retirement? Like, what was it about that you didn't like? We've had a couple of guests who have a similar kind of story where they sort of decided to break free from their life. But what was it for you?
I think I wanted more excitement in my life. Like, there was nothing necessarily wrong. Like, I did not have a bad life. I just wanted to be proud of what I was doing, and I didn't necessarily feel that way.
Okay.
So when you were growing up, like, was there this dream or this vision of who you wanted to be, and you just, you followed the rules the right way, as far as the way we look at it, but I'm sure that while you were doing all that, you're like, oh, I wish I could be that, or I wish I could be this. Like, is there something that you wanted to be that you're hopefully trying to pursue now?
Well, when I was growing up, I had a pretty specific dream. I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Interesting.
I always loved animals. Instead of sending me to like Mosheva or Jewish sleepaway camp, I opted to go to a horseback riding summer camp in Davie, Florida.
Cool.
And just like, if someone had a pet or if there was a stray cat, I would always try to make friends with them. And I really thought I was going to do that. But in high school, chemistry and calculus really beat me down, and I thought I couldn't fail out of college. And
Interesting.
so I decided to make a more practical decision.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's pretty awesome. So, as far as like leaving your job, like you mentioned how you realized that you didn't really want the right thing, and then you started getting it. You didn't really want what you were doing then. It seemed boring. It seemed stagnant. You wanted to get out of it, which is admirable, by the way, to even figure that out and kind of move out of that. A lot of people will just, instead of finding a solution to do that, most people will actually, if you were to take 100 people, about 96 of them would just be miserable, and they'd be spending that misery through their paycheck and not really recognizing that they're not happy going through life. And I think it's important that we, and for you to hear just as a basic affirmation, that the idea that you were able to take matters into your own hands, get the books that you needed in order to do the research to create your escape plan, quote unquote, is an important thing. I mean, it says a lot about your character. Because like, as I mentioned, most people will not do those things. Most people will just be like, nope, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is what I was told it's supposed to be. This is just life. I'm sure that a lot of, like, including myself, I'm sure a lot of people would even go through life just they would just be going through the motions, and they'd be going based off of what they learned. I listened to this lecture where this guy says that your children will inherit whatever you don't figure out on your own. Not only that, but losing my train of thought for a second. But not only will your children inherit that, it's also the fact that, like, when you this is directly quoted from that lecture, but when you say that I don't have a good memory, it's not that you don't have a good memory. It's because you heard your parents say, oh, I don't have a good memory, or I'm not good at that. And the interesting thing is that I've been reading a lot lately, and I've started to realize from the books that I'm reading that a lot of us know what we know based off of what we learned from our home. We don't really know much based off of school. School is just figures out, oh, you're good at this, you should go in that direction. No, but we live in America, which is a capitalist country, where people can they have the opportunity to take matters into their own hands. And the hardest thing is to break from those chains. Do you have something to add there?
No.
You're just groaning. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly admirable because, like, for me personally, I was like, I want to go to Israel. I moved to Israel. Just went. Mm-hmm. There are obviously some trials and tribulations that came from that. But now I'm back home. Did I expect to come back home? Not really. But now I'm going through the trenches, doing research, figuring things out, trying to do things in my own creative way. I was given a gift and an opportunity to start again. Now that's hard, but it gives me this ability to look back at the it gives me this ability to look back and to say, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistakes I made before. Now's my opportunity to capitalize on what I truly want from my life. So I think that's important.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna finish. I'm done talking, but
Praise be. Just to move things along a little bit, unless you were going to do that.
I was gonna do that. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So let's move on with your story based off of you just left your job in Houston, right? And now you're like, you saved all your money, you're ready to rock and roll. What do you do next?
Yeah. So first of all, I appreciate you saying those things about me breaking away from the status quo, and I do think that it's important for all of us to kind of reevaluate that the direction we're going is the way we're supposed to go, and it's kind of like updating your operating system. Like as we get older and our situation changes, if we're still operating based on the things we thought were true 10 years ago, it might not be helpful or healthy. So
Right.
it's whatever system someone puts in place to reevaluate that and make sure that they're doing the right thing is super important.
Interesting. So I actually want to ask you, what did you do in order to update your operating system? Did you do anything in particular? Did you just, I mean, what was the process there?
Well, for me, part of that was leaving the path that I was on, somewhat unplugging from my social group, somewhat from my family, really trying to take away all the noise so I can connect to what I actually thought about and what I actually cared about. So I quit my job and I drove to Miami, and I almost immediately flew to Israel, where I worked on a farm. I got connected to them through WOOF, Worldwide Organization for Organic Farming.
And where in Israel were you?
The name escapes me, but it was in central Israel, which is an unlikely place for a farm. Not very far from Tel Aviv, actually. It was a small private farm, and I was actually the only volunteer there.
Okay.
So it was not very social, and again, I was able to be by myself and be with the animals. Like the schedule was wake up at sunrise, feed all the animals, take the sheep out to the pasture for 2 hours. Like I was a shepherd, which is pretty cool, especially in Israel. And then I would have time in the middle of the day to do whatever it is I wanted, read, walk around, ride their horses, and then again, in the evening, take the sheep out and feed all the animals, and that was really my schedule. And I loved it. I had really a lot of time to reflect and think.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do the words "you are going to die" mean to you?
I actually have those words written on my mirror in my room.
I know.
Oh, you know? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a reminder to have a sense of urgency, to pursue the things that matter to you sooner than later, because if you keep postponing them, you're never going to do them. And life tends to get in the way. There's a lot of moving parts, health, family, finances. So if one sees themselves in a position to make a change or to try something, I think it's important to do it.
I like that. Very nice.
How did you know that was on his mirror?
Because I paid attention when we did Brendan's podcast, and he mentioned it.
It's a good memory.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the story. I came back from Israel, and I did some preparations as far as getting gear and food for the hike I was telling you about. I decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, which is over 2,000 miles from Mexico to Canada through the west coast of the United States. And yeah, I flew to San Diego. I had a friend drive me to Campo, California. I put on my backpack and I started walking.
Just by yourself, just like that?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, partially, that was my answer to your question. That was the way I wanted to reset my operating system,
Okay.
by giving
Wow.
myself time to just
I think you know who does that. I think not
Forrest Gump.
Okay, similar to Forrest Gump. No, similar to what you do. I think Matthew McConaughey does the same thing, where he leaves his phone, leaves everything at home, and just goes into the wilderness somewhere, and just to reset his brain. That's really cool, actually. My brother and I both read a book called The 3-Day Effect. You ever read it?
I have not.
That's good.
Do you want to explain it?
Yeah, sure. It's based on research done with PTSD from all walks of life, like former sexual assault victims
And prostitutes.
and
He's a prostitute. That's why I had to say that.
yeah, was, and former soldiers, veterans who suffer severe PTSD, and what they do is they go to the wilderness for 3 days, and the third day, it's the reason it's called the 3-Day Effect, is the third day is like a marked difference, and the writer of the book takes her colleague, and she just went through a divorce, and she's very she has PTSD also, and they just talk about the 3-Day Effect, and she does 3 groups. She does drug addicts, I think.
No, she does prostitutes, veterans, like war veterans, and she does this author who has writer's block.
Isn't it also drug addicts? Or?
It could be drug addicts as well.
Okay.
In any sense, it's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there's no secret that immersion in nature is helpful. That's why there's all these wilderness therapy programs, Outward Bound, and things like that. Because when you take people who are going through a tough time and put them in the wilderness with a mission, a path, a community, it really helps them, empowers them, gives them perspective.
So here's something interesting. The book ascribed the 3D effect to awe, because everybody who comes out of it has the exact same experience, which is that you're much smaller than the world, and it just sort of puts you in your place and makes you realize that your problems aren't as big as they seem.
Is that how the book defines awe?
Well, pretty much, yeah.
If you want to read it, we suggest listening to it on Audible. I suggest listening to it on Audible because she actually does the recordings.
She does a sort of podcast. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's really cool. So you know who else did that? A long walk. I think Walk Across America. I just found this out a couple weeks ago. You know Mike Posner?
Sure.
So he did that, and he made an album on it.
No way.
About it. It's incredible. I listened to the whole album.
Is it new?
I don't think it's that new, but
He did it recently.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible.
What's it called?
I don't know. I'll tell you. I can just look him up.
Okay.
But yeah, he did that, and I was very fascinated by that. I thought it was really, really cool. And I just want to ask you. So you spent a lot of time alone. How long was the trip itself?
In time?
Yeah.
It was about a 6-month journey.
You just walked for 6 months?
Yes.
What did you eat?
So the logistics of a long trail, especially one like the Pacific Crest Trail, is one, it goes through towns. So every 100 miles or so, I'm able to go into town and either get stuff at a supermarket or have a resupply box sent to me. So the way I did it is I prepped food at home. My mom helped a lot, and she would mail it out to these various towns that I would walk through. And so I was able to get food and keep going. So the main food, like the dinner portions, were these dehydrated meals. So you dehydrate rice or beans or ground beef or vegetables, whatever it is, and then on trail you boil some water, mix it up together, and then you have a meal.
Damn.
And then besides that, it was tortilla sandwiches and tuna packets and
Lots of carbs.
Cliff Bars, things like that. Yeah, fuel.
That's really cool. Lucky for you that your mom was supporting your endeavors.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Doesn't happen for a lot of people. So I want to ask, like, you don't have to get into detail because I know it's deeply personal, or it could be deeply personal. But what kind of reflections were you making on this walk of yours? Like, what kind of things were you thinking about? Like, I spend a lot of time alone. I go on long walks, not that long, but I go on long walks and I think about, things I could have done better in certain situations, things that I'm doing currently. So I'm just curious if you can kind of give us an idea of the kind of things you were mostly reflecting on. You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but I would like to know.
Well, the thing is, when you're walking 10, 12 hours a day, you really think about everything. Sometimes you're just thinking about the scenery, but oftentimes you're reflecting on your life and conversations you've had, or maybe conversations you want to have. It's the nature of life. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I definitely have some top lessons learned that have stuck with me, and particularly being alone. I learned the difference between being alone versus being lonely.
Explain that.
Well, lonely is a feeling that you're lacking something, that you're lacking other. But when you're alone, it's very possible to feel complete and to feel like you have things to entertain you, for example. You kind of learn to become your own friend.
Yeah.
And that's really empowering, because now that I'm back in civilization, I'm not hanging out with others because I feel like I need to. I'm hanging out with people because I want to. It's a much more intentional thing. I'm able to opt out of things that don't work for me because I'm okay with being alone.
That's huge. That's a big one. That's really cool.
Did you have any sort of difficulties physically with walking 12 hours a day?
Sure. At the beginning, I was not very efficient with what I carried in my pack, so it was pretty heavy, and I had some shin splints, which is very painful.
Sure.
But it took a few days off, and I was able to continue, and it's nothing that some ibuprofen couldn't fix.
Okay.
So the physical part of the walking wasn't that hard on my body. The hardest part was really managing resources like food and water, because sometimes if I didn't have enough of those, it was a bad day.
Right. So what was your day-to-day like? From what time would you wake up? What time did you go to bed? Like, what was it?
So that depended on where I was physically. Like, for example, in Southern California, I was in the desert, and so I didn't want to be hiking during the heat of the day. So I'd wake up extremely early, 4 or 5 in the morning, hike until 11 or 12, take a siesta, like a nap under a tree, and then continue at 4 or 5 p.m. and then hike until 11. But that changed.
Wow.
That changed in the when I got to Central California and onward, where I would hike usually from close to sunrise until sunset.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
Not very long, because I just copied other people.
Oh, okay.
So this isn't like a completely secluded trail. There are plenty of other people hiking.
Right.
And so a lot of them had more experience than me, so I would ask.
Okay. Very cool.
So would you do this again?
Of course.
Would you do it alone, or would you do it with a group?
So
or another person?
In theory, I think having another person would be fantastic, because when you have significant emotional experiences that are shared, you get to reflect on them, kind of relive them.
Create a really cool bond as
Correct.
well.
However, it has to really be the right person if you're
Yeah.
going to be spending that much time with them in challenging situations.
Yeah.
So I think I would do it alone at this point.
Really? Again?
Yeah.
What would it be, the same one, or would it be something else?
So right now, the long distance hike that I'm fantasizing about is called the Continental Divide Trail, which is another one from Mexico to Canada, but that goes through New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, a little bit of Idaho, and then Montana.
That's cool. What does it take to prepare for that kind of a hike? What do you have to do?
Well, I mean, being in decent shape helps, but I don't know if anything prepares you for hiking 20 miles a day more than hiking 20 miles a day.
Well, I don't mean physically. I mean like if you were to plan the hike, if it was actually happening, how far in advance would you have to plan? What would you have to do? what kind of things would you need to get in order to make that plunge?
I see. So that depends on how risk averse someone is. Like, I met people on the trail who were improvising as they went along. Like, they bought a backpack
they just went.
and they just went, and every time they went to town, they found a supermarket, found whatever food they needed, and just adapted along the way.
So, would you do that?
No, I tend to be more of a planner.
Okay.
And actually, before the trail, I was probably what's considered a control freak. I really
You wanted to be
needed to know
prepared.
everything. But something that the trail taught me is no matter how much you prepare, there are things that are out of your control, and you have to adapt to them if you want to continue.
You know what I find interesting?
What
I
do you
would-
find interesting?
Okay, shut up. I would do the same thing personally. Like, if I was traveling, I would make sure that I have everything that I needed, down to the underwear that you could wear for 3 days in a row.
Ex officio.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the best brand.
He knows what I'm talking about. So like, I would do that as well. But what I've recognized from my own personal experiences, which haven't gone on a really long walk like you have, but I have my own personal experiences. But what I've recognized is that you can be as prepared as you want, but if the idea of doing something like that is not only the journey, but also the mental, emotional journey of it and the character building journey of it, the idea of just going and learning to adapt with what you have is a challenge, and it seems as though it might be a beneficial challenge when it comes to learning more things about yourself.
Absolutely. I don't know if there's something more valuable
Yeah.
than being able to adapt and being resilient. It's in those situations of discomfort where I think the growth really happens, where you reflect on who you are and where you're going.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I would consider doing that, to be honest. I don't know when, I don't know how, but that'd be. I'm pretty jealous. That's pretty awesome.
Well, it's not an all or nothing thing. Like, next,
course not.
You can go on an overnight backpacking trip. A lot of places that are here in Colorado.
That's
we
true.
can find a time and we'll go together.
All right, maybe we can like record it. We do a 3-day effect of our own.
Are you coming?
He's not
Sure.
coming. He's not coming.
Hey, listen, if I can get off from work, I don't mind an adventure.
So, I'm curious. Like you now live in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
You're a nature man, for lack of a better term. You went on this big long hike, which we just talked to complete exhaustion, which I'm sure we can do for hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
What's your lifestyle now? Do you have daily routines? Like, how do you get yourself prepared for the day? How do you get yourself prepared for who you want to be as a person? If that's a question that I can ask.
Sure.
It's a loaded question.
Is it?
Well, I have a really amazing work arrangement right now. I work from home, and I work for a company in Florida, so I'm working East Coast hours.
Okay.
So I'm finishing work around 3 or 3:30 p.m. So, especially in the summer months, I make it a point to get outside. I have plenty of sunlight left, so I might go to Golden or Boulder and get a quick hike in.
Really?
Yeah.
How many times a week do you hike?
Well, in the summer I try to do 2 or 3,
Wow.
but in the winter it tends to be
Difficult, yeah.
it tends to be a Sunday activity.
Have you ever done snowshoeing or?
I have recently purchased my first pair of snowshoes. I have yet to use them,
Nice.
but I'm excited. It might happen this Sunday.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Lots of enthusiasm coming from over there.
Shalom, you know this is as enthusiastic as I get. So.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so continue.
So I do make it a point to get outside. I find an immediate effect on my mood, especially if the sun's out.
Yeah.
Just sitting outside.
Vitamin D.
Yeah, it's very important. And then as far as other routines, I don't know if I have as many systems in place as I would like, but I do dabble with journaling.
Really?
And I like to reflect. Like, I have that board on my wall where I have all of these quotes that really the idea is to shake me and remind me what's important. So instead of browsing on Facebook, I actually do something productive.
Right.
Give me one example of one of your favorite quotes.
So my favorite one is, discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most.
I like that. That's good.
It's kind of like that Aristotle quote.
Which is?
I'm not going to be able to quote it verbatim, but it's excellence.
Oh, right.
Wait. Damn it. What is it? I got to find it right now. Continue. I'm going to look for it.
So in the meantime, what that quote means to me is there are a lot of things that are tempting, comfortable, but they're not necessarily what I really want in the long term.
Show. Yeah.
So while I might want to browse the internet and eat a donut, which I don't really want to do, but in theory, what I want most is to maybe be fit and be focused, so I'll go to the gym instead.
Okay. One more time. What was that quote?
Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most.
I like that. It's
That's
good.
cool. Okay, here's the quote. Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. So, I like your lifestyle. I wouldn't say that I'm much of a nature person. I'm trying to be. I definitely have a favorite park that I go to on a regular basis where I sit and reflect, and I find it to be incredibly important to be outside. So I really do. I do admire that a lot. Can I ask, like, as far as who you want to be towards the future, your big picture, is there any kind of struggle there that you're kind of working towards?
Absolutely. I wonder if anyone ever reaches the pinnacle or reaches where they want to be. For me, my barometer of success is progress. Like from looking at from where I started to this mystery of whatever it is I want to be, as long as I feel like I'm taking steps
Right.
towards there, I feel good about it.
So, you said it's a mystery where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know you're making progress if it's a mystery?
This might be a little lofty, but it's really a feeling.
Okay.
If I feel like what I'm doing fits,
Well, have you ever heard of the proximal zone?
I've not.
Okay, it's a psychological term. What it means is basically what you're explaining. It's this. So, like, recently I've been thinking that, like, happiness is, like, not a real thing. Like, it's a word that doesn't mean anything. And I got that from one of my favorite albums, which I listen to at least once a week, which is called "Happiness Is Not a Place" by The Wind and the Wave. And I was doing some research, and I heard a lecture where somebody was talking about the proximal zone, and the proximal zone is when you are just challenged enough, and you're in this, like, you're like, you can feel it, like you're in this space where you're just like, you're locked in.
Yeah, isn't that the flow state?
I guess. What's the flow state?
So from my understanding, the flow state is,
That's a jiu-jitsu term, actually. Flow.
I mean, it's when you're working on something that really takes your focus and pushes you past your limits, but not to the point where it's impossible or dangerous, but to a point where you're completely focused on that thing.
Right. Yeah. Flow state, proximal zone. So basically what you're doing is you're looking for the proximal zone, and that is how you find your outcome.
So, because I'm curious, how do you know what that feels like?
Well, I think the journey is you try a bunch of different things, and when you find something that feels good or productive, you delve more into it.
Like you feel a little more centered, less confused.
Yeah, absolutely. If it feels like it fits,
Right.
like if you feel like you're made to do that thing. then you're getting close.
Yeah, it's sort of like listening to music and losing yourself in it.
Yeah. I used to do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm accustomed to going out. When I was in Israel, I walked all the time, and I just listened to my favorite music, and I just walked and reflected. And that was
The old city especially.
Yeah, that was a huge thing that really, really centered me.
Muslim quarter.
Yeah. Christian quarter is pretty nice.
Christian quarter is beautiful.
I think there is something special about walking. There's
It's incredibly
primitive
special.
connection that humans walk.
Yeah, we're built to walk. We're not built to run.
I was actually listening to something. They were talking to a some kind of sports scientist, and basically this guy's job was to take elite athletes and help change their habits so that they can reach their fullest athletic potential.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something incredibly interesting, which I've said many times. I'm sure my brother's heard it as well. It's he said the people who live the longest are the people with the strongest legs, because you can only live as far as your legs can take you.
Mm.
And that's very enlightening in many ways, in the sense that, like, it's not just that you have strong legs to take you from one distance to another. It's the fact that you have strong enough
Destination
legs.
to another.
Thank you. See, that's why he's here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason
I know
I'm
what you
here.
meant.
From one destination to the
I
other.
just interrupt the podcast otherwise.
But it's not just about that. It's about the idea of taking yourself long enough to unlock those answers that you have. I've said this many times, but Albert Einstein even says things about how time spent alone is time well spent, in the sense that it gives you the opportunity to unlock life secrets. So
I think it's also important to sort of identify that someone who is uncomfortable being alone needs most to spend time alone, because it's like, it's to be alone with your own thoughts is to be face to face with everything that you're struggling with.
if you can't get along with yourself, how can you expect to get along with others?
But that's often scary. That's why all these distracting apps and tools are so popular, because people are afraid to explore those thoughts. And to touch on what you said, I think that's why walking is so powerful, because it takes time. You're walking 2-3 miles an hour. If you're going quite a distance, you have plenty of time to explore your thoughts, the fun ones and the not fun ones.
Speaking of distracting technology, do you watch Black Mirror?
I do not. It makes me very uncomfortable and anxious. I cannot handle it.
Me too. I just watched an episode of Black Mirror yesterday that was all about how apps are built to for dopamine. It was
The show's tremendous. It's well done, but
insanely surreal. Yes.
it doesn't make my life better.
Definitely not. It scares the hell out of you.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy.
But I think another really cool thing that we can learn from walking long distances is the fact that it takes a while to get from one place to another, and the fact that it takes a while for us to reflect on certain ideas within our own lives. It also subtly teaches us the simplistic lesson of it takes time for things to come into fruition, which I think is super, super important. Like, we come from a world where patience is like nothing. It's the snap of a finger.
Yeah, that's why Shabbos is so important.
That is true.
Right? Like, even on your walks, I'm sure you had your phone available to you. You know, like, there's always a distraction that'll, but on Shabbos, you are alone. You can't distract yourself.
Yeah, I understand. I kept Shabbos when I was on the trail, and sometimes I would just set up my tent Friday night and be alone for 25 hours.
Wow.
Or more, actually.
And you'd stay put for 25 hours.
Yeah, read a book,
Nice.
talk to myself.
Did you have a Kindle, or did you have a bunch of books with you?
Not a bunch. I would carry one book at a time.
No Kindle?
And then you, like, whatever town you'd go through, just buy a new one?
Mm-hmm.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, but something you said I think is really important about how walking shows you that getting somewhere takes a lot of time. It's also what's really satisfying about walking, or specifically hiking. You're trudging along, and then at some point you look up and you look how far you've come, and it's so gratifying. It's really satisfying to see how much you've accomplished.
Yeah, we did a 14er in August.
Awesome.
Yeah, and what was really strange is, like, very painful. I actually got sick for 3 weeks afterwards.
3 weeks. Altitude sickness?
No, I was coming down with a cold the day of the hike, but I didn't care. So I didn't drink enough. I had a meltdown when we got down. Like I was in the fetal position.
But now do you look at the experience positively?
No, I love doing 14ers.
We did Grays and Tories.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah, I love doing 14ers. I would not trade the experience for anything in the world. I would not trade being sick. You know, I loved it. That's why I did it regardless of how I felt. But like what was really funny about it was like it didn't feel like it took 12 hours, but it did. It was like, I mean, it was pretty crazy. Like 3 hours passed, it felt like 30 minutes.
Why is that?
I have no idea. But like I looked at my watch. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I felt pretty high.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like the difference between type 1 and type 2 fun.
Okay.
So when it comes to hiking, or specifically I think hiking a 14er, type 1 fun is something that you're enjoying while it's happening. Type 2 fun is you enjoy it afterwards while you're reflecting on it. So when you're hiking a 14er, you're breathing hard, your feet hurt, it's cold, it's windy, it's hard to breathe. But at the end, when you're at the top, or at least when you're back in the car, you can look back and say, wow, I'm so proud of myself. I accomplished something amazing.
Maybe. I mean, honestly, I loved every second. But it just felt like it felt like the hike was a lot shorter than it was. It was, I don't know.
What do they say? Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, doesn't it?
When I was doing the hike, I started off on my own because I wanted to start already and I wasn't gonna wait for anyone. But I was so happy that I did it by myself. Like I did a little bit by myself, and I found this really awesome spot with a cool view, and I just meditated for like 15 minutes, and then got up and.
That was a crazy view.
Yeah, and then I got up and I just continued with the group, but I unfortunately wasn't super prepared. I went with sneakers.
Oh,
I was over prepared.
That's why I said it was painful.
Huge tiny mistake.
Yeah, I mean I didn't have hiking boots, but that's you live and you learn.
Here's the huge tiny mistake I made. I brought like 20 bottles of water, and I was
Water's
carrying
heavy.
them.
That's 2.2 pounds a liter.
Yeah.
He was
I was
crying.
carrying the whole thing on my back. The second I got off the mountain, I took my backpack off, and my shoulders were in so much pain. I wanted to collapse. I think I did.
Yeah, I just brought one bottle with me.
That's probably not enough either.
I was chilling. See,
He was with me. He had plenty.
but also I was when I was in the army, we learned how to salvage our water.
To ration?
There was actually one point when I was like doing some sort of field test in the army, and it was hot, like you have no idea. And there's this guy, and he's coming. He's like, I want water. Can I have water? I was like,
No. You got to tell the story and be more dramatic about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know how I
please.
could be more dramatic
Do
about
you
it.
want me to tell the story? I've heard this story like 12 times.
You can tell a story. I'd love to hear it from someone else.
So my brother was doing field exercise where they're running in the desert for, I don't know, what, 2 days?
Yeah, 2-3 days, something like that.
And the desert is a hot place in Israel. We went to Meron on Lag BaOmer, and we stopped in the desert. We got ice cream. My ice cream melted before I opened it. That's how hot it is in the desert. And this guy is like panting, and he goes, "Can I have some water?" And my brother has 2 bottles of water, and he drank one of them, and he's not going to be able to fill the other one. He's not going to be able to refill
Until noon
the next day. And he gives the guy the water.
Wow.
The guy chugs the bottle of water and gives it back to him empty.
Savage.
Yeah.
Savage.
So I didn't have any water until noon the next day, and I almost collapsed of dehydration. But it was just like sheer willpower that just kept me going. And then I finally got the water. I was like, I learned my lesson. Ration it out and don't give to anybody. If there's two things,
Okay.
if there's 2 things that I'm not giving anyone, it's water and wipies.
Ooh,
That's it.
Those are very valuable.
I'll
things,
give you
especially on the
food.
trail.
I don't care. I'll give you food. I'll give you extra ammo. You're not getting my wipies, and you're not getting my water. Maybe I won't give them extra ammo. But aside from that was a big lesson.
Yeah, I don't know if you can trust.
I mean,
ammo.
desperate times call from desperate measures when it comes to water. A particular time on the Pacific Crest Trail when I ran out of water, I ended up pulling water from a really undesirable source. It was like a big cement cistern that was filled with rainwater and a dead rabbit.
Nice.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. But I did filter the water.
You had one of those filtrations?
Yeah, I had a filter, and I also had some iodine tablets.
Damn.
So that helped.
Clutch.
But it was not my proudest moment. But
Talk about that
Tasty.
Jewish neuroses of being ready for the hike.
yeah, I guess. And yeah, water is extremely valuable.
It's incredibly valuable. They have like these new things now where like you just have a straw and it filtrates the water and you can just take the water from any source. Or they should just make those Dune suits.
What is that?
Yes.
You ever
Dune
see?
suits
You ever
are
read
awesome.
Dune or like see the movie or anything?
I've not.
It's starring Sting. It's fantastic, and by fantastic I mean strap in. It's insanely boring.
Okay, I'll add it to my list.
Basically, they have these suits that they wear that every time they relieve themselves, it turns into food or water, and they can just eat it from the suit or drink it from the suit.
That would solve a lot of our problems.
I'm sure they have something similar to that. That's from Dune.
They are working on it. I read a fantastic book called, I want to say it's called Abundance. I don't remember, but it talks about all of the technologies that are going to solve the world's problems, and there is a toilet that they are working on
Oh, I think I saw this. Yeah.
that converts every bowel movement into 65 watts or something.
Oh yeah, I think I did see that. That's crazy, right?
That is crazy.
Reusable energy. And now there's also 3D food, or they're working on it
Isn't
at
food
least.
normally 3D?
3D.
No, like the 3D printers. They're
Sure.
making food with 3D printers.
but what?
Yeah. You didn't hear about that?
What does that even mean?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just know that they're doing it.
Well, I'm glad you have no idea. This is what Dr. Peterson calls Google knowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know where to go from there, Yehuda.
Neither do I. Do you want to just close it out?
We could close it out, unless you have something else that you'd like to add.
Yes. Would you like to inspire us? No pressure.
Inspire.
Yeah, actually, please inspire us.
No pressure. That's like the worst thing you could say to a Jew.
No, I can share another lesson that I learned on trail
Awesome.
that I think applies to normal life as well. And that's about not carrying the things that don't serve you because they're too heavy. Like on trail, if you're carrying extraneous things, they're slowing you down and they're impeding your progress towards your goals. And I think same thing in everyday life. We have things, less physical things, but a lot of emotional and mental things that we're carrying that are holding us back. And this ties into what we talked about at the beginning with reevaluating your operating system.
Okay, so who said some say love it is a river?
The Beatles.
Is it the Beatles?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, well here's the thing about burdens. Sometimes they come because you have a responsibility. When does your responsibility to others get to impede your goals?
Well, there's a metaphor I really like that you can't pour from an empty glass. Like you have to be full yourself before you give to others.
Okay.
Does that run along the lines of if you have integrity to yourself, you'll have integrity towards others? Or is that something entirely
That's
different?
different.
Okay.
So shut up.
I think this is about like, what does it mean to be selfish or
Or
selfless?
to be kind to yourself.
Correct. I think self-care is extremely important, and once you're in a good place, you're in a much better position to help others.
Well, positive self-care. A lot of people do things to take care of themselves that isn't good for them.
Like drink a lot of alcohol.
Drink a lot of alcohol.
Smoke a lot of weed.
Is that considered self-care?
It
they
depends.
consider
Well,
it
I mean,
self-care.
it's a stress reliever.
Like, speaking of the 3-day effect, right? People will do things like comfort foods, right? They'll eat things that are so bad for them. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is how often are you doing it? And if you're doing it really often, why are you doing it so often?
I actually think I disagree with you here, because if it's a comfort food, then you are training your body to like something that is bad for it.
Correct. I think it's kind of a circular reasoning. You change your habits, and then your habits change you. Like
That doesn't mean you don't get to have a slice of pizza every
Well,
once in a while.
I'll give you an example, actually.
But don't do it because you're stressed out.
I'll give you an example. Perfect example. I think it was last week, I watched a documentary, a Vice documentary.
Is it called John Wick?
No, shut up.
Okay.
I watched a Vice documentary about a guy for 17 years. All he eats is mac and cheese. That's it. And it's because it's his comfort food, and it comes from past trauma with his parents. So, like, that is a legit thing. So you could look at people, like, let's not forget food, right? You look at someone and they act a certain way, or they believe that they are a certain thing that they're not, but they're going to continue, even if they know it's a bad thing, they're going to continue to believe that so as to avoid being truthful to themselves. So there are things that people do that they think are ultimately going to help them in the end, but they will not. That's the difference between...
I want to say something that I think is really funny but insanely inappropriate.
Please.
Okay.
I want to see this guy's stool samples.
I don't. There's something wrong with him.
It seems that way.
I'm sorry.
But I agree that building unhealthy comfort mechanisms is really dangerous, but people lean on it because it's what they know, it's what's familiar, it's what quote unquote comfortable.
So what I think I admire about you and about myself, I can only speak for myself, I think for my brother as well.
You can admire him too.
No, I mean, I do admire him in many other ways.
It's a real burden, actually.
But I think that we could close out by saying that people should learn to be true to themselves. We talk about this a lot. But also, what's this word? Proximal, right? Proximal and the flow. People...
Proximal zone and the
Proximal,
flow.
thank you. Proximal zone and the flow. Where people need to be able to take themselves outside of their comfort zone to understand what that proximal zone is, so that they can start mending their bodies, mending their mind, mending their emotions, and actually do what they were put on this earth to do. It's unfortunate that most people don't get to do what they were put on this earth to do. But what's hopeful is that if they don't get to do those things, they inevitably are part of a new mission. So there's some hope to that, as far as like what the plan B is concerned for people, or the plan C, D, so on and so forth. But I think if you want to focus on what plan A is for you, aka being the hero of your own movie, you need to be able to find those areas where you can find that proximal zone of figuring out what and who you're supposed to be.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Thank you.
Shut it.
So, yeah, this is the perfect time to shut it down. So, thank you so much, Max, for joining us.
Thank you for having
This
me.
was an awesome conversation. I like how we just flowed into things.
Oh.
It was awe-inspiring. Is that what you were
It was
trying to say?
awe-inspiring.
Okay, good. You used the word correctly.
On the 5th night of Hanukkah, my brother said to me... He just corrected me a bunch. That's pretty much all that
Only happens on the 5th night of Hanukkah?
No, it happens all the time.
Yeah, almost every day.
I wouldn't go that far.
That's how he shows,
I
that's
said
how he shows
almost.
his love.
I said almost.
Okay, almost every day. Yeah, it is how he shows his love. And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Truly. Because, we all need to have someone who tells us the truth sometimes. In any sense, thank you for being on our podcast. We look forward to hearing more from what you're doing. Maybe we'll join you on a hike one of these days. Maybe,
Absolutely, let's do it.
Maybe we'll do the Continental Trail together. Who knows? If I'm cool enough, of course. But
Yeah, sure.
you're not coming. I know you're not coming.
Whatever.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You have anything else to say?
To me, Rose-colored glasses. Rose-colored glasses.